Hi. Oh, I have some friends in the front row. Thank you. So welcome to Forward at Hunter. And I'd like to start by thanking Lee and Teague Hunter and their team for welcoming Forward Women Advancing Hospitality to the conference. Near and dear to my heart. So I know you're not really here to hear from me, and you really want to hear from our panelists, but I want to take a minute just to talk about the wonderful work that AHLA and the AHLA Foundation has been doing to move our industry forward. Forward is AHLA's year-round platform to engage and elevate women leaders in our industry, working to make hospitality the #1 industry for women who want to advance in their careers, like we all do. I'm truly grateful to be here today as the chair of this committee. It's an honor to have this opportunity to serve in this role. I'm humbled by the progress we've made in a relatively short time, and we've done that with the support of all of you in this room and many who are not here. The panelists you'll hear from today are experts in their fields, from development to management to capital raising. These women are driving our industry forward, no pun intended. So our industry wins when we elevate all voices, bring all perspectives to the table at every level. And I'm delighted to say it's clear from the data that we're doing this anecdotally and in fact. By doing so, we know that our industry is winning. AHLA and the AHLA Foundation team continue to grow the offerings available to women in hospitality through Forward. Last year's merger of the Castell project into the foundation, the Forward Ambassador Network, Castell's Build and Elevate leadership programs, the DEI-focused Leadership Academy, which apparently just graduated 50 more industry leaders, mentorship programs, and more. And as a student of leadership, I really do believe in leadership development. So programs like Castell, which was here this morning, and it was actually really very engaging. So it was featured this morning at the Hunter Conference, and we believe it's essential if we're really serious about making our industry more inclusive. Highlighting these efforts feels especially important during this month, which is Women's History Month. And to keep the momentum going, we'd like all of you to think about continuing to engage yourself and your teams in leadership and development through AHLA, and take advantage of all of the wonderful programming that they have to offer. You can start by joining us tomorrow. We have a reception, the Women in Hospitality reception. We hope you'll stop by, and it's open to everyone. And then we'd like to see you May 4th and 5th in Chicago at the Swiss Hotel, and registration is now open at ahla.com/forward. And now I'd like to welcome this tremendous group of leaders to the stage to discuss today's topic of hotel development, sharing their diverse perspectives. Welcome Julianne, CJ, Jyoti, Andrea, and Lori. Sorry, I had a typo.
All right, hi everybody. Welcome to Hunter. It's great to be here to kick this off with everybody, or be the follow-up to the kickoff. I'm Julianne Smith. I'm Chief Development Officer of the Americas for IHG Hotels and Resorts, and I'm really excited to speak with these tremendous leaders in our industry. I'm sure most of you know who they are. So we'll start off, though, with a lightning round. Your name, your title, what your job is, who you work for, your first job in the hotel industry, and then what your involvement with AHLA Forward or the foundation is. Start with you, Lori.
Sounds good. Hi, I'm Lori Tirado. I'm Managing Director and Head of Business Development for Access Point Financial. My main responsibility at Access Point is really growing our portfolio through loan originations. And
First job in the industry?
sorry, my first job.
I have the cue cards, so don't worry.
My first job in the industry actually maybe took a little bit of a different approach than others. I worked for a commercial mortgage banking company on the marketing side. And while we focused on all income producing properties at the time, we wanted to become more involved with hospitality. And so I helped lead the efforts within a marketing capacity at first to transition into loan originations and then really help form a hospitality lending group for the company.
And then your involvement with AHLA.
So this is my first Forward panel. I'm really honored and happy to be here. And I think it's so important to advance women in hospitality, and the best way to do that is really through mentoring young women and really just being there as a resource for them and helping them through sharing perspectives and experiences and really just breaking down barriers to form more leaders within women in the hospitality industry.
That's great. Thank you.
Can I echo everything she said? Jyoti Sarolia, President and CEO of Ellis Hospitality. My family owns 6 hotels in the state of California. We have some investments in Florida, as well as Pendleton, Oregon as well. The many hats that I wear is really strategically visioning where we want to see ourselves year 1, year 5, year 10. My biggest work the last 2 years has been convincing my mom, who thought she would never leave California, and selling a couple of assets that we've been sitting on for 20 years and raising capital of north of $10 million, so we can go buy better hotels in this market. So definitely in the development realm right now. And then I've been part of the Forward at AHLA for about 2 years. I know the quick story that I have is during the pandemic, we were not all alone in what we were facing, and there were a lot of tough decisions we had to make. But it was some of the emails that came from Chip Rogers and AHLA and just being actively involved. I made a phone call to one of my mentors. I said, you and your brother were sitting here, in 2008 with the same level of portfolio. What are some of your recommendations? And he gave me 2 advice, and he literally hung up because he was working on his own portfolio issues and challenges. And he says, be proactive, be positive. So my involvement with the Forward, as well as the foundation, besides being a board member, is to contribute, to give back, to say yes to everything they tell me to do, and advancing women as we and making it sexy to be a part of this amazing organization. And so that's really what we do.
Thank you. Andrea?
You see why Jyoti inspires me so much. I'm Andrea Foster. I'm Senior Vice President of Development for Marcus Hotels and Resorts. We're an independent hospitality management company. We also invest in many of our hotels, primarily full service, lifestyle, and resorts, some high-end select service as well. And I focus on new third-party management opportunities and acquisitions. My first job in hospitality, I don't know if it counts that I started working at age 10 in my mom's ice cream shop. But in case that doesn't count, I was an intern with Marriott Vacation Club International on Hilton Head the summer before I matriculated at Cornell. So that was my first real hospitality job. My involvement with HLA and Forward, I've been on the advisory committee for Forward since its inception. I think that was about 5 years ago. I was the chair for 18 months through the pandemic, starting just before the pandemic hit, and am very proud to have just joined the HLA Foundation Board of Trustees.
All right, it's hard to follow these ladies here, but my name is Katarwa Jones. A lot of people know me as CJ. I work for, let me, cue card here. I work for RLJ Lodging Trust, and my main functions are acquisitions, dispositions, and portfolio management. My first job in hospitality, a little bit different like Lori, was in hotel consulting. I did an internship. I didn't really know that much about the hospitality space because I grew up in a small town. There was only one hotel there. So I never really had an opportunity to work at a hotel, but once I did the internship, I loved, the space. So I'm, stayed in it. And the last question, my involvement. So most of my involvement is on the Castell side. So I did Castell at college and other Castell-related events. And it's important for me because I'm on the investment side of the business. And, having been in this business for over 20 years, it has grown so much with so many more involvement of diversity and women in the space. And so it's important for me, to keep that going and to let people know that there is a space, for others on that side of the business.
Well, thank you, ladies, for your service. None of us get paid to be part of AHLA, but we kind of do because it helps us grow our own businesses. And the amount of money that the foundation has raised in the last couple of years is pretty impressive in what we're able to do with it. So if you're not involved with AHLA or the foundation or Forward or Castell or any of the organizations we're talking about today, please do. It's really helping strengthen our business and our industry. So Jyoti, first questions to you. We're in a pretty remarkable place in our industry and economy right now. We have inflationary concerns, although that grows RevPAR, which is not necessarily a bad thing. We've got labor constraints, which can be a way to create a lean and mean operations. But what do you see for labor, and how do you think that's going to impact summer business and seasonal travel coming up?
So the biggest increases on our P&L last year was literally labor and all of the support that we have for our team members, whether it's bonuses, we launched healthcare, dental, vision this year. There's a lot of things that my team asked. And rather than not participating and rather than having it to be slim and lean, one of the strategies that I gave to my team is, fine, you want all of this Christmas presents, but let's talk about revenue. So our strategy really is, here's my benchmark of revenue that I want to see, right? So from last year to this year, it's a $2 million increase. With $2 million increase, I can support the things that I think I want to do for my team members, that I think we must do for our team members. So we definitely are not lean. We are definitely prepared for an influx. We're also in California. It's like the waves, you know, you don't know when you're going to be busy. It's a little hard to forecast the way other markets are able to forecast. So we're always having to be prepared. We're also looking at, you know, in the time where it's not so busy, where is there training opportunities? Where are we going to arm them when we have influx of tourism coming back or corporate travelers coming back? So there is no lean. There is just more like making sure your team members are armed with all of the resources they need to do their job, making sure they're appreciated. So you're paying standard of industry. You're providing all the benefits so they don't leave. So we really haven't had a lot of turnover at our hotel, and we really didn't furlough anyone in 2020, and it's really helped us a lot.
That's great. Sounds like you're creating great culture too, which we'll talk a little bit about. So Andrea, you lead development at Marcus. So you see that the rising construction costs and interest rates are causing some constraints on new construction. So that's going to affect supply over time. What's your perspective on that?
Sure. So from the operator and owner perspective, generally speaking, because there are some exceptions to this, reduced supply and not seeing as many new hotels being constructed allows existing hotels to maintain or grow its occupancy as well as grow average daily rate, because there's less competition and compression around pushing, spreading occupancy around and pushing rates down. From an acquisition standpoint, fewer hotels being built can mean that available capital has fewer hotels to go after, and prices can potentially increase. But that's one example. There are certainly exceptions to that. And a couple of exceptions, though, to new supply not coming in. There are in some markets unsatisfied demand. Trying to go to a certain market, there aren't enough hotels in that particular market to satisfy the demand. So when there are increases in supply, it can be absorbed quite quickly. That is a unique exception. And then in other markets, or maybe similar markets where there's unsatisfied demand, say at the luxury level, as an example, where there's demand for a higher level hotel and it's not being served because there isn't a luxury hotel on the market. You open a new hotel in the market, and then the demand that would prefer to be there can go there, and it can then raise the rate ceiling for the market. So there are opportunities as well, but generally speaking, having existing hotels as an owner-operator, not having as much supply increase helps us maintain and increase our occupancy and push average rate a bit more from a general standpoint.
Yeah, thank you. You know, those rising costs, unfortunately, are not new news. We've been compressed with that for a bit now. What is new news is Silicon Valley Bank, Credit Suisse, and what's going on there. Lori, what's your perspective on what's happening in the state of the industry, and then who is able to secure financing today?
So it's interesting because obviously this is very new, so no one really knows exactly what's going to happen, but thankfully they were able to stop or corral the issue and stop the contagion. But what it does is it really puts us on more of a cautious footing where you kind of wonder what's the next ball to drop. So that's obviously a concern. And then you have to look at, regional banks, and there's the biggest issue there, what's going to happen. But at the same time, where they may pull back a little bit on lending, and maybe some other lenders will as well, there are still lenders out there active in the space. I know we haven't taken our foot off of the gas really at all. There's other life insurance companies who will lend on lower leverage transactions. There's also credit unions and the bigger banks and the community banks that will lend as well, and then CMBS lenders too. So while the issue is there and it's a concern, there's still lenders active in the space, and the biggest concern from my perspective is really will a deal pencil today where maybe interest rates are a lot wider than they were a year ago at this time where deals made sense? It's harder to know if a deal is going to make sense given where rates have gone.
Yeah. Now, CJ, profitability obviously is top of mind for investors, right? That's why investors get into it. They want to make a return. Interest payments have been deferred for some time over the past months, years, depending upon the relationship. What are you seeing relative to the P&L and how it's being affected today?
Yes, generally speaking, for owners, NOIs have been recovering, back to their pre-COVID levels. And in some markets, they've even exceeded their pre-COVID levels. And the one good surprise, during the recovery was the strength and the recovery of ADR, which had a positive impact on profitability. So I do think from an NOI perspective, we are seeing a recovery. But on the flip side of that, on the debt side, that's where I think, maybe some owners, may be seeing a flip side of the situation, whereas COVID was more NOI, a NOI issue. Today it's more of a debt issue. So, some owners are probably seeing, with the rise in interest rates, an increase in their debt service payments or a challenge in refinancing. So it's become more of a debt story, for today. So NOIs are recovering, but for some owners, the debt side of the equation, may be an issue.
Yeah. Now, this question's for everybody. What we're seeing today is a bit of a shift in terms of there's new economy brands, there's a real focus on economy. Then all the way on the other side, there's a focus on luxury acquisition and in resort markets. The design side of hotels are thinking about how to make the guest room a little bit more work efficient for guests who are, blending that sort of leisure, that business leisure travel, how to redefine the lobby space to be more revenue producing. So how are each of you thinking about how we're bringing hospitality to bear today? Andrea?
I'm happy to start.
Yeah.
So we are executing and planning many renovations in our hotels currently, and we're thinking about, in a lot of cases, the bleisure guests. So that's the blend of business and leisure. So it's people who they may be on vacation, but they're going to work while they're there, or they're going for work, but they're going to stay and they're going to enjoy themselves, for a couple days, before or after. So some of the things we're doing is creating more living space within the rooms. So king bedded rooms, we're putting in sectional sofas to create a little bit more of a relaxed lounge space. That's one example. And on the other side, in our resort guest rooms, where we've recently done a renovation, we are putting desks back into the rooms. There was a certain point in time, desks weren't cool in resorts, and now we do need them. But the change is people are working much more efficiently. Think about how you travel. You probably have your laptop. Maybe you have a little notepad, but you're not bringing files and stacks and books and all of that. So they're 4-foot desks, not the big 6-foot desks that we had before. So we're making it a lot more efficient space. So just trying to create, again, address that bleisure guest who really needs everything, and not just one thing or the other.
So we're doing the same thing. This is probably going to be the first year after last 10 years that we're going to spend the most amount of money in upgrading our guest rooms. It's just time and necessary. Some of the things that we're looking at too is repositioning, right? I have 2 contracts coming up this year. I'm going to stay with them, but what other brands can you give me to accommodate the market that I'm competing with? So we're going through our deliberations of what could be possible with those brands. I had to disenfranchise last year another brand, not because I didn't want the brand. It was just specific to California, but it's a development opportunity time. I don't want to be stuck in a contract when I can develop a brand on top of it, a dual brand. So that's what we're moving forward with. So those are the decisions that we're making as well too, is who's coming to our market, what are some of the amenities coming back, and the desk is something like, what do I do when I'm traveling? I need that desk and workspace when I'm there, so we're doing that as well.
That's great.
Yeah, and when we're thinking about markets that we want to invest in, we do feel that, consumers will still mix the corporate and the leisure. So those 7-day-a-week markets, where you have all types of demand, where you have corporate, you have leisure, you have group, those become more important.
Yeah, I agree.
Do you mind if I ask, one of the things, we're at such, I think, a pivot point in our industry where because of COVID, we've all kind of been shaken to our core. And I think it's a great opportunity for us to, take what's malleable now and really kind of rethink it. And, one of the things that gives me a little bit of pause and thought at this point in time is we have disruptors in our industry. We have the short-term rentals, and why are people leaving hospitality and going to stay in a short-term rental? And a couple of things come to mind for me. One is you're traveling with a family or a group, you want some gathering space and some places to kind of convene together. In another case, and this is one of my things, is if I'm staying over a few days, I kind of want my own almond milk and I want some baby carrots and hummus and something, my own cold brew in the refrigerator. Can we offer concierge services to provide a little bit of a kitchenette experience in a hotel room? Because that's again another reason I think people go to short-term rentals is because they want that flexibility and their own kind of self-service. What are we providing in our grab and goes or advanced shopping or something? Even get your confirmation email. Get a follow-up email saying, here's a checklist of things that we could put in your room before you arrive. Considering how much people spend on DoorDash and Uber Eats, I don't have kids, but I hear stories where it's hundreds of dollars for delivery of a couple Starbucks over several periods, not just a couple. But it's a lot of money that people will spend, and I'm sure that our guests would be happy to spend a delivery fee and something in order to be able to have the conveniences they need and maybe bring them back to hotels as opposed to losing them to the short-term rental industry.
Yeah, those comforts of home have become even more highlighted and exacerbated through the pandemic. I mean, many of us who aren't working in hotels or weren't working in hotels were working from home. So, and remote work has stuck, and we've seen that. Many of us have seen that flexibility, which has been good, but that has caused some concern with the city centers, right? People are not going back to work directly downtown. So how has that affected your business as a management company in urban markets?
Yeah, no, we absolutely operate and in some cases own a number of city center hotels. And we are certainly seeing, because of remote work, a dip, let's say first, we're seeing an impact on business transit. We have since the pandemic. We're seeing slight increases in that at this point in time, but remote work in most of the markets we're in is really settling in at 3 days a week in the office. And it'll be interesting to see if it increases from there or if we're in a 3-day-a-week in the office mode for a while now. What we're also seeing in BT and the business transient side is from the consulting verticals. There used to be teams of people, say from EY and others, who would come into a market to do consulting for companies within the area, and they would stay for a week or weeks at a time, come in for the week, go home for the weekend, come in for the next week. It's now settling in. We see it at 1 or 2 days a week, and then they do a lot of the work remotely. So that's also seeing an impact. On the balance side of that, back to the bleisure point we talked about before, we are seeing guests bring a +1. So they're bringing their significant other or spouse or maybe a child with them and saying, come on, I'm going to go to this, this particular city, to do some work. Come enjoy the time with me. And then maybe they arrive a day earlier or they stay a day later in order to experience. So that's a little bit of the offset that we're seeing. But remote work is having an impact.
Yeah.
So.
And Lori, how has that settled on the lending side?
So it's been very difficult, to get deals financed in the city centers and in convention hotels for the last several years. What I would say, though, is in the last 6 to 8 months, it's improved. It's gotten better. We've looked at more hotel deals, convention center hotels, that look a lot better, where RevPAR maybe not be back to where it was in 2019, but it is improving, and there's definitely a lot of upside. And I think that will continue. We're all social animals, right? We want to be around people. We want to connect with people. So I think companies may have more regional meetings, more people will attend conferences and travel, and that will continue to improve for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's interesting also the sort of trends that you see. I was just in Mexico City last week, and I was talking to some people about how rents have gotten sort of sky high there because so many people from San Francisco and New York, as an example, are remote working from Mexico City and enjoying what that city has to offer. And 2 or 3 years ago, people weren't really talking about that as a place to go. So it's interesting the shift that occurs. So when I think about remote working, I can't help but to think about culture and how we all sort of impact culture in this industry. And Jyoti, you are an outlier. You're a female developer and owner. There aren't many of us in this industry, a lot more than there ever was. But please share with us your story. Your mom's a big mentor of yours. I know she is a hotel owner. So tell us about your journey.
My mom owned and operated a hotel, and everything I do for her. She came to America at the age of 17. My family's been in the business since 57, so she got right into working in the business. And I remember when I launched the management company to run their business, I said, Mom, I know you love to work at this very hotel that you've started with, but you are not going to work for me. We're going to have to figure something out here. And it's not easy going to the person who's been there for like 30 plus years. And I'm like, Mom, please. So I said, I sat her down and I said, here's the direction that the team and I have, and here where we're going to go. And what you used to know what to do 30 years ago is a little different today. Give us a chance. Trust us. Figure it out. So we were doing really well. We did actually $500,000 more that one year than she did when her, children were running the hotel. And all she kept telling me was, your labor is high, your labor is high, your labor is high. And I said to my mom, Mom, it's $500,000. That's extra revenue. Scale it up. I think you're still taking more to the bank. So it's just getting her used to that. But here's the lesson that I want to teach everybody. My mom taught me one thing. So she started in housekeeping at the age of 17. There's nothing glorified of doing housekeeping work, right? It's one of the hardest, strenuous job that anyone can do. I should know because I had to redo some of that in 2020 with my team members to help out. But she ended in housekeeping. She was part-time at that point at the age of 70, but at 70, she stopped working. And to this day, she will start to go half. But she has one moment. She first visited, she owns and operates a Wyndham property. It's our first franchise business. We got into franchising in 1992. We still own that asset, and it's still a Wyndham asset. And every time the renewal comes, I just renew it just because it's our first property, and it makes sense for us. But I remember her first conference was our last conference, and it was in Vegas. She got to meet Chip Rogers, Sam Patel, Jagrudeep Banwala, all the CEOs of these major, amazing brands and organizations. But the one thing that stood out to her was Jeff was saying hello to everyone coming through that door, and that's 7,000 people coming through that general session. He stopped. And he stopped my mom, and I think you gave us 30 seconds cameo, and you said, she is doing a wonderful thing. You should be proud of your daughter, and it resonates with her. So we wanted to say, thank you for that. So she inspires me to do any work and all work, and I think I've done every development, every possible job there is in our industry, and I continue to do it for her because of that.
That's beautiful. I love that story. Thank you for sharing that. So CJ, Leslie Hale, the CEO of RLJ, where you work, has often spoken about the importance of diverse minds and diversity coming to the table to create a great business case, and you guys are very successful, so clearly it's working. How does that corporate culture kind of resonate with you, and how does that help you build your team and inform what you do?
Yeah, my path has been, someone had to pull me out of my comfort zone. And, they gave me a voice and an opportunity. And so I think that's important, as my day-to-day with my team, as I lead my team, as I develop my team, I think it's important to give them an opportunity, to, give them a chance to have a voice, and then also to be receptive to listening to that voice. So those are the things that I try to incorporate when I'm leading my team day to day. And we just have such an inspiration with our CEO because she has done that, for a lot of us in this industry. So that's how I like to lead my team, to give them an opportunity and a voice and a chance to lead as well.
Yeah. I'd like to stay with you. We've had a really interesting last couple of years. As you think back, what's one challenge that you've overcome, and what's one opportunity you foresee for the future?
Yeah, I think, from the investment side of the business right now, what we're seeing is just so much volatility in the market. I think that has been a challenge because there's no predictability, and every day, things seem to change. So I think that has been, from the investment side of the business, definitely a challenge. On the opportunity side, though, there's always opportunity in a challenge. And so there possibly, from the deal side, that there could be some opportunity that comes out of this. So for the future, we're looking for, good things, but right now it's just a little bit unpredictable.
Yeah, agreed. Andrea, I'll go down the line.
Sure. So on the challenges side, I think it's acquiring hotels these days. Considering the current interest rate environment, a continuation of the bid-ask spread that we've actually seen for the last really 3 or 4 years. Return expectations haven't really moderated a lot. And so when we see treasuries touching 5%, what is why accept the low teens return on a hospitality investment that has a much higher risk? So I think that's what we're challenged with these days on the acquisition side. On the opportunity side, it's back to what I'd actually mentioned earlier is, we're in a malleable point in our industry. We've had to rethink, we've had to zero-base budget, in a way that we'd never had to do, kind of starting with a closed hotel, and then how do we build up from there? And, so rethinking how we're approaching our industry, labor models and how we can evolve those, incorporating better technology, different service approaches, and really enriching our leadership with DEI. I think these are all opportunities that I hope we're leaning into and basically move our industry forward at this point in time.
I want to add to that too. Number one for us is still labor. I think that the pandemic has literally created people to reconsider what they want to do in life. And I think we've lost a lot of people in our industry who are just not returning back into our industry. And I think that's why it's so important to be a part of the foundation board in creating programs for people to understand that this business isn't something that you come and just do night audit and you're done. It's a career path for a lot of people. You'll often find a lot of people in this room started with one thing with no goal in mind, and now they're running some amazing companies. I think we can all share that. I have this one hotel, it's the Quality Inn in Temecula, where 4 of them started off as guest service agents. All 4 of them became GMs of that hotel and then into other hotels. And now 3 of the 4 are part of my corporate team. So I'm continuing to increase, their presence in our company and growing myself with growing them. But all of them can tell you, well, I'm only coming here because I'm going to school. All of our night audit jobs are people going to school or it's a secondary job. So I think, creating it to be a career opportunity, educating people with that opportunity. And I know this morning in Castell, just loved having 5 students in there and telling them, would you ever consider this a career opportunity? And if not, really do so because that's what this industry is. So to me, that has been a challenge, right? So we've been doing it with creating programs to be able to maintain them, but it's still hard for us to find the right people to do the right job, and I don't think that's going to go away. So instead, rather than waiting for that to happen, because I don't think that's ever coming back, you as a company has to do something to create the right culture for people to want to come stay and work for you. So that's going to be our focus for the next couple of years and making sure we revamp that and do that. That's the challenge. The opportunity, the pandemic also gave us opportunities. It was a blessing to only own economy brands and mid-scale brands in the downturn economy. Most of it, actually all of them were in California. So we did do well compared to the rest of our family and friends who owned hotels across the country. It was very, humbling to be grateful that there were a lot of resources, a lot of organizations like CHACA, AHLA, IFA, everyone doing their part to making sure we survive. We survived. The opportunity is in 2008, it wasn't always so favorable for us, but in 2020, my team, every day, we worked 7 days, we worked 365. We worked with all of our industry partners that we have relationships with. I felt blessed. I thank the people, the men and women that were part of that journey every single day. They probably get tired of why I say it, but if they realize what they did for us, I think they would understand why we're so appreciative. So that's definitely been an opportunity, and we should all be very grateful for that, because I think what we're coming out of is way more than what we've expected in a short amount of time, and at least I can say that for myself personally. That's awesome. Yeah.
And for me, from a lending perspective, it's really been tough just to stay positive when there's so much volatility in the market, and you just wonder, okay, well, what's going to happen next? First, we have to, go back to 2020 and manage our existing portfolio and help owners as much as we can to kind of get through it. And that's really been the challenge. And now it's the banking crisis, and what's going to happen next that we have to deal with. So the challenge is really just staying positive. But for me, the opportunity is there's a lot of loans that are coming due this year that are maturing, and we can step in and help to refinance some of those loans. And there's also a big capital hole in the industry where there's a lot of hotels that need to undergo a PIP or a renovation, and we can provide the funds for that. So we see the greatest opportunity on the CapEx side, helping owners complete brand mandated PIPs and get the financing they need to do that.
I'll stay with you, Lori. Do you have a favorite transaction or deal you've worked on in the recent history?
So I like to say that all the deals that I've worked on, I've enjoyed, because every deal that you do offers a new perspective and you learn something from it. But my favorite deal was probably the first deal that I've ever done, because it's just so memorable. And it was right when I was just starting to get into loan originations. And earlier in the year, in a very male-dominated industry, where all the other originators are men, and then here's me just trying to figure it out, I set a goal to complete one deal, and it was maybe in March of that year, and just underwrite it and close the deal. And just under the wire on December 31st, I closed on that transaction. I was just so proud of myself to be able to do that, and that really started something for me in loan originations and being on the lending side and the brokerage side. So that's probably my most memorable one.
That's a great one.
Yeah.
So I have two. I'm going to tell you my first deal that I did. My dad and mom didn't speak English very well, so we were buying our first acquisition outside of San Francisco. So it was in Marin County. It was called the Inverness Valley Inn. There were 8 cottages. I was 22 and in college, and my dad says, oh, come to lunch. We're going to go try to buy this hotel. So we think of development today, but back then we didn't think the word development wasn't really in our vocabulary. But I basically bought that hotel for my parents, and that man said to my father, it's because of your daughter that I'm selling this hotel to. So your pitch is a really big thing when you're wanting to buy a hotel. Sometimes they will not sell because of the money. They sell because they're giving it to someone. And it was a boutique hotel, bed and breakfast, really cool thing to do. So that was one. But Julie, because you're here, I really want to share this story. So last year we sold two properties, and we raised capital, and I was coming on the 6-month mark of the exchange deadline. So we didn't make one, but we did make one. And there was a wonderful story here, and you're a part of that story. And so we had 28 days. I had 28 days to close if I was going to avoid the exchange. And people always say, don't rush, don't do this, don't do that. So we found a deal, and it was in Lompoc, California. It was with your brand, IHG. We already had an IHG, an award-winning with guest service, and we were all good. What I couldn't make in the 28 days was the approval process. My brother tried. My brother worked with whomever he worked with, and I know we sat on the board together. I made one phone call, and within 12 hours, I was approved, and we were able to close. But the story is so impactful, and I said this to my mother, it wasn't that she helped me, and I don't know what she did. It's just our appointment was 1 week later. Being approved was not what I was going to be afraid of. It's being approved in time to be able to close, and literally I had a 4-day window when I called her, and that's how we made it happen. But when I saw her at an off-site event that AHLA Foundation does in August, the first thing she came to me and said, and I don't know if you remember, but she says, Jyoti, did we take care of your mom? If anybody gets into franchising, I'm not an advertiser of franchising, but the importance of building relationships, the importance of showing up, and the importance of just asking humbly what someone can do for you is so powerful to me. And as a result, I'm very loyal to my brands, but you definitely were a part of that story. And to this day, I think I'm going to tell that story more than just once.
I love that.
Thank you so much.
I think the moral of the story is that moms are really important. So if yours is still on this earth like mine isn't, call her, all right, after this. Andrea?
All right, well, I guess I'll share two because you're talking about moms. So, one of a most memorable one was when I worked for PKF in LA, and I did my first market study. And when that hotel was built, it was like a mom birthing her child. I was like, oh, that's my baby. That was my first study. So anyway, and I recently had another colleague from then say, oh, I just got to tour this new hotel. Remember when we did the market study on it however many years ago? So it's always fun to see things that you work on so hard come to fruition. But also benefiting from recent memory, we won a management contract in 2020. And that means something to me because I led the virtual pitch. We had all pivoted, everyone in this room and in the world pivoted to Zoom, but I had to lead, multiple people on our team pitching their specific areas, talking about, different ways that they would make an impact, through their teams on this particular hotel, and then we had follow-ups in person. And I just loved seeing how everyone came together in this very different medium and really pitching us beautifully, both as a team and individually. So that was a very proud moment as well.
Well, I must say that every deal that I worked on that has closed would be my favorite one. We work on we underwrite a lot of hotels, and they don't all the time work out in the underwriting process. But the ones that, that we do work on and that close, I'm very appreciative, that we've gotten to the end point. But, just like Lori, I really like the deal side, and we can be working on the same market, a similar hotel, but every deal is different. You just learn something new each time, throughout the process. So I am very appreciative to, be able to work on those.
I love that because we're always students, right? Even though you've each achieved such great things in your career, we're always learning, and I hear that from each of you. So that's all the time we have. Thank you all for being here. Thank you, ladies, for sharing your experience.